Sir, we can't let you stay here. The first-class cabin is for paying passengers only. Her voice didn't crack. It didn't waver. It landed like a slap, clear, cold, and drenched in something worse than arrogance. It wasn't just policy. It was a verdict, spoken in front of the entire cabin, by a woman in a Horizon Star uniform with a tight ponytail and a tighter smile. Her name tag said Karen Walsh, but the name didn't matter. What mattered was how she said it, and who she said it to. Darius Carter stood there, stunned but silent, dressed in a sharp navy blazer, platinum tier card in hand. But to her, he was just a black man in the wrong seat. A problem, an inconvenience, a disruption. She didn't see a billionaire, or a CEO, or one of the airline's biggest investors. She saw someone she thought didn't belong, and what she didn't know was that in just 30 minutes, he would bring this entire airline to its knees. No yelling, no violence. Just truth, power, and the fury of a man who'd had enough. Before we dive into what happened next, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And if stories like this matter to you, hit like and subscribe, because silence never changed anything. Let's speak louder together. The moment the words left her mouth, the tension in the cabin thickened. Darius didn't move. He stood near seat 1A, his rightful seat. His boarding pass had been scanned, his platinum card already verified. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He simply existed in a space people like Karen thought he shouldn't. "This is my seat," he said evenly, calm but firm. Confirmed under Carter, priority black tier. He extended the card toward her again, professionally, without emotion. But Karen didn't even glance at it. Instead, she looked toward a white man already seated in 1A, Richard Hale. "We've reassigned the seat," Karen said. "Mr. Hale is a priority guest. You'll need to move to economy." Darius blinked, slowly. "Reassigned? When?" Karen smiled, like she was doing him a favor. "It's already done. Please cooperate." From the adjacent seat, Laura Hale, the man's wife, tilted her head and muttered just loud enough, "Honestly, he doesn't look first class." She said it like an observation, like she was doing the crew a favor by stating the obvious. And then came the sound that Darius hated more than anything, the intercom click. Tyler Brooks, a younger flight attendant under Karen's wing, spoke into the speaker system for the entire cabin to hear. "Passenger Carter in 1A. Potential seating error. Verifying now." Darius felt the heat rise, not just from embarrassment, but from the familiarity of it all. He'd lived this before. Too many times. At 25 on a flight to Denver, he'd been asked if he was in the wrong cabin. "Are you with the maintenance team?" the steward had asked him. At 30, a gate agent had told him, "First-class check-in is to the left," assuming his seat couldn't possibly be what it said. Those weren't accidents. They were patterns. Today, they'd picked the wrong one. "This seat was bought, confirmed, and I'm not moving," Darius said. His voice didn't shake, but Karen didn't care. "Your card looks suspicious," she said, louder now. "And you're delaying the flight." That was when Leah James, the youngest flight attendant in the cabin, stepped forward. "He's on the manifest," she said. "I just verified it at the gate. Seat 1A, under Carter." Karen ignored her. "Please step aside. Leah, you're not cleared to override seat assignments." Across the aisle, a phone camera blinked red. Sophie Turner, a white passenger in her 30s, had started filming. She whispered, "This is racial profiling. I've seen this before." Her partner, Jack Morrison, lifted his own phone. "Uploading to Reddit now," he muttered. The cabin began to stir. A low murmur spread as passengers turned in their seats. A few began whispering to each other. A few began recording too. Richard Hale leaned back, smirking. "We handled this earlier with another attendant. They said it was fine." Darius kept his eyes locked on Karen. "You're making a mistake," he said. She didn't blink. "If you don't move, I'll have to call security." And then, she did something he wouldn't forget. She grabbed the platinum card from his hand without permission and tossed it onto the nearest empty seat like it was trash. "This is invalid," she declared, but Jack Morrison had already picked it up. His eyes widened. "Darius Carter, Carter Capital," he read aloud. "Priority black tier. This is real." Passengers began to murmur again. "Wait, Carter Capital? Like that Carter?" Someone gasped. Another leaned over and whispered, "He's the tech guy, the billionaire." Karen's eyes narrowed. She'd heard it too, for the first time. Her composure slipped. Laura Hale folded her arms and turned away. Richard adjusted his cufflink. Suddenly silent. Darius reached into his blazer and pulled out his phone. He called one number. "Elena," he said into the receiver. "Activate internal protocols. I want them watching this in real time." On the other end, a crisp voice answered. "Systems live, sir." Leah stood still. Watching it all, Sophie's camera was still rolling. Karen turned to Tyler. "Get security," she snapped, but Darius didn't flinch. He turned, slowly. To the passengers now watching, his voice was quiet, but it carried. "This airline made a decision today, not just to insult a customer, but to profile someone who funds their operations." He paused. "And that decision has consequences." The cabin had changed. You could feel it, like a storm about to break loose. Darius hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't yelled. But something about the way he stood, the way he looked Karen in the eye without fear, said everything. And still, this was just the beginning. Karen didn't say a word at first. She just stepped back, stiffening, as whispers spread through the cabin like a slow burn. She was losing control, and she knew it. But power doesn't just disappear. It fights on its way down, and that's exactly what she did. "Remove his bag," she barked suddenly, turning to Tyler. "Crew property bin. Now." Tyler looked unsure, glancing at Darius's leather laptop case resting neatly in the overhead compartment. "Ma'am, that's—" But she cut him off. "He's refusing to cooperate. Treat the bag as a security concern." Darius locked eyes with her. "That bag contains confidential files for a tech summit in London. If anything is damaged." "Then maybe you should have followed instructions," Karen snapped. As Tyler reluctantly pulled it down and tossed it into a locked crew bin near the galley, the cabin reacted. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. Richard Hale sat back, watching like it was entertainment. Laura tilted her head and muttered, "Still causing trouble. Even now." Another little knife disguised as a shrug. Darius clenched his jaw, then slowly turned toward the rear wall of the cabin, where Leah James stood frozen. Her lips parted. "That's not protocol," she said, her voice trembling. "That's not how we handle priority passengers." Karen shot her a look. "Then maybe you don't belong on this flight either." Darius took a breath, not to calm himself, but to speak without exploding. "Call your supervisor," he said. "Call someone who understands the chain of command." But Karen wasn't listening. Her ego had taken the controls. She waved him off and addressed the passengers instead. "Ladies and gentlemen, please be patient. We're resolving an internal error." But Sophie, still recording, whispered, "This isn't an error. It's intentional. It's disgusting." And Jack posted another clip straight to Facebook. "Live from Horizon Star. First-class racism in real time. His caption echoed throughout the digital ether within seconds, across the cabin. Passengers were watching everything unfold, not just through their own eyes now, but through their phones. "They're just making it worse," Laura grumbled. "He should sit down and stop dragging this out." That was the moment it hit Darius. Not just the insult, or the theft of his dignity, but the pattern. And it wasn't just about him anymore. This was something passed down, carried, endured. He remembered it like it was yesterday. He was 15. It was his first time on a plane, flying alone from Houston to Atlanta to visit his uncle. His mom had saved up for months to afford that ticket. She'd ironed his best polo, polished his shoes, told him, "Sit proud, baby, you belong wherever you go." But the moment he stepped onto that flight, the stares started, the whispers. The gate agent had said, "Are you sure this is your seat?" A man in the aisle had looked at him and said, "You probably meant to book coach." He didn't argue. He sat there quietly for 2 hours, pretending not to feel the weight of it, but he never forgot it. Never. And now, all these years later, that pain wasn't just memory, it was fuel. "Give me my bag," Darius said again, calm, but sharper. "Now." Karen ignored him. Tyler looked to her, but said nothing. Darius turned to Leah. "Is there a reason my belongings are being treated like a threat?" She didn't answer, at least not out loud. But something in her eyes had shifted. She looked toward the front galley, then back at him, and said, "No, there isn't," Karen hissed. "Leah, that's enough." But Leah stepped forward, for the first time. "He has every right to be here. You're treating him differently." Karen flushed red. "That's insubordination." But the damage was done. Passengers were watching, listening, recording. Darius picked up his phone again and dialed. "Elena," he said. "Mark this incident. Full escalation protocol, logged and time-stamped." She replied instantly. "Should I loop Vanessa in?" Darius paused, glancing at Karen. "Not yet. Give it one more chance." Then Leah leaned in, quietly, just for Darius to hear. "She's done this before," she whispered. "Complaints filed, ignored, buried." He stared at her. "How many?" Leah's eyes flickered. "3. That I know of." That was the moment the fire inside him stopped burning and started boiling. "She knew what she was doing," he said aloud. "Sophie caught it on film," Jack muttered. "It's all coming out now." Tyler tried to move toward the front galley again, but passengers shifted in their seats, creating subtle roadblocks, passive resistance, quiet protest. Even a woman in row 3 stood up and said, "Excuse me, but I want to speak to someone in charge." Karen snapped back. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you." But it did. It concerned all of them now. Darius turned back to the cabin, his voice louder, still calm, still deadly precise. "They took my seat. They took my bag. They ignored the manifest. And now you've heard what Leah just said. So I ask you all, how many times has this happened when there weren't cameras rolling?" The cabin fell into a different kind of silence. Not confusion, not discomfort, reflection, the uncomfortable kind. Now let me ask you, if you were sitting in that cabin, what would you say to Karen? What would you do if you saw someone robbed of their dignity, their truth? Right in front of your eyes? Drop your answer in the comments. Because silence helps the system. And your voice? It just might help someone like Darius. Laura broke the moment, her voice cutting through the hush. "This is ridiculous. He's making a scene." But no one agreed with her now. The tide had turned. Karen looked toward the cockpit, like she was considering going higher, but her grip on the situation was already gone. Jack posted another video, this time captioned, They've crossed the line, bag taken, passenger profiled, airline complicit. Views began to climb. Fast. Darius stepped forward, slow and sure. "I've given you every chance to correct this," he said to Karen. "I asked. I showed proof. I waited. But now, you'll answer for it." Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And, for the first time, Darius didn't just feel angry, he felt ready. Because the next call he was about to make, it wouldn't be to his assistant, it would be to his lawyer. "Security, report to Gate B9 immediately. We have a disruptive passenger refusing to comply." Karen's voice rang through the intercom like a warning siren. But it wasn't fear in her tone. It was control. Desperate. Cracking control. She didn't say his name. Didn't say what he'd done. Just labeled him a problem. That's how it always starts. With a label. And when the cabin door cracked open and Officer Malik Evans stepped inside, the air inside the first-class cabin shifted. He was tall, calm, and quiet. The kind of man who observed before he acted. But Karen was already in motion, gesturing sharply toward Darius. "That's him," she said, her voice pitching up. "He's refusing to move. He's delaying the flight. He's threatened crew members." Every word crafted like a dagger. Darius didn't even blink. He stood still, hands by his side, expression unreadable. But inside, his heart was pounding, not out of fear, but out of restraint. Because the last time this happened, it nearly destroyed his career. He had been 30, dressed in a charcoal suit, briefcase in hand. He'd boarded a flight to Chicago for his first major acquisition deal. He'd bought a first-class seat, dressed the part, done everything right, and still. A gate agent asked him to step aside for a random verification. That agent never checked the white man ahead of him. Just him. Darius had complied then, quietly, his face burning as others watched. He'd told himself, "Stay calm. Don't ruin your moment." But now, he had nothing to prove, and everything to reclaim. Officer Malik took 2 steps forward and held up his hand, not to Darius, but to Karen. "Let me speak with the passenger," he said. His tone was level, professional. Karen hesitated, surprised. "Of course," she said, clearly expecting him to remove Darius on the spot. Malik turned to Darius and said, "Sir, I'd like to understand what's going on from your perspective." Darius didn't shout, didn't raise his arms, just reached into his blazer and pulled out his card and boarding pass. "I'm in seat 1A. Confirmed ticket. Platinum black tier. I boarded as instructed. I was told to move by a flight attendant who accepted a bribe from that man right there." He pointed at Richard Hale, who suddenly looked extremely interested in the emergency exit signage. "My bag was taken. I was insulted. I was accused, all while I followed every rule." Malik looked down at the pass, then back at Darius, then at Leah, who nodded. "He's telling the truth. I verified it twice." Karen opened her mouth. "Officer, he's manipulating." "Ma'am," Malik interrupted, "I need you to step back. Please." Tyler, still standing by the galley, glanced at Karen, then looked away. And then came the breaking point. Tyler, in a final act of pettiness, grabbed the intercom and said it. "Well, I guess the tech genius won't be making it to his summit after all." It was a jab, an insult, a line crafted to mock. Darius turned his head slowly, locking eyes with him, and without missing a beat, he said, "Your airline won't make it to next quarter." The words weren't loud, but they landed like thunder. Across the cabin, passengers froze. Sophie had already uploaded the second clip to Twist, captioned, "This is what racism looks like when it's wrapped in customer service." Within seconds, it had begun to go viral, thousands of views, then tens of thousands, and all from inside the plane. "It's everywhere," Jack whispered. They're talking about it already. Leah stepped closer to Malik. He's a major investor, she said. I didn't say anything earlier because I thought someone else would step up. But now, you need to know who you're dealing with. Karen's eyes snapped to Leah. That's confidential, she hissed. No, Darius said. It's not. He stepped forward now, just slightly. Not threatening, not towering. Just there. Present. Solid. My name is Darius Carter, CEO of Tech Trend Innovations, founder of Carter Capital, and one of the primary investors behind Horizon Star Airlines. You've humiliated your biggest backer on camera. You've mocked me, tossed my credentials, and when you didn't like being challenged, you called for backup to remove me. The cabin went still. Malik's eyebrows raised. Slowly, then, carefully. He stepped back, turned to Karen, and said, I'm not removing him. He has every right to be here. Karen's face dropped. Laura Hale looked like she wanted to disappear into the seat. Richard muttered, This is getting out of hand. Passengers began to speak up. Why was his seat taken in the first place? They never treat anyone else like this. This is outrageous. And you. If you had been sitting there, seeing it all unfold, what would you have done? Would you have spoken up, stayed silent, filmed it, fought it? Tell us in the comments. Because when injustice shows up this boldly, doing nothing is a choice, and silence, that's how it survives. Darius turned to Sophie. Still recording? She nodded. Always. He gave her the smallest nod of thanks. Malik crossed his arms. Unless there's a physical threat or federal violation, this passenger is staying right here. Then, to Darius. I'll file an incident report reflecting everything I've seen, Darius replied. Good. You'll want to include what happens next. 2. Karen backed away slightly, lips pressed into a tight line. And then, finally, Leah spoke clearly, so the whole cabin could hear. This isn't the first time Karen has done this. There have been complaints. They just never went anywhere. Another twist, another blow, and this time, from someone inside the system, Jack muttered. They're done. Karen's voice shook. You don't know what you're doing. Darius didn't respond. He didn't need to, because every second the cabin sat in silence. He gained power, not from yelling, not from force, but from truth, from exposure, from the walls crumbling in plain view. And this wasn't even the climax. This was still the climb. Karen had nothing left but force. Her words had failed. Her commands had been questioned. Her authority, once absolute in this cabin, was slipping fast. So she did what failing power always does. She ordered escalation. Tyler, she snapped, voice sharp as broken glass. Remove him. Now. Whatever it takes. Tyler looked stunned for a moment, unsure, glancing from Karen to Darius to the sea of passengers staring with disbelief and rising fury. But the order stood, and Tyler moved, his hand clamped down on Darius's arm. Not a firm grip, but enough to send a message, and that's when it snapped. Darius didn't flinch. He didn't shove back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to, because the cabin did it for him. A man in row 2 stood up, blocking Tyler's path. Don't touch him. A woman in row 3 stepped into the aisle, arms folded. No one's going anywhere. A third passenger rose farther down, placing herself in the narrow corridor, turning her back to Tyler like a wall. One by one, bodies filled the aisle, not yelling, not fighting, just standing, blocking, refusing. Karen's face turned pale. She looked around, eyes wide, realizing she had lost control again. You're interfering with airline protocol, she barked. This is obstruction. But her voice didn't carry anymore. It fell flat, empty. Darius simply adjusted his blazer and looked around the aisle. He made no announcement, no request. He just reached into his pocket and took out his phone. Not to call security, not to call the airline, but someone more dangerous, someone more precise. "Vanessa," he said as the call connected. "Proceed with the lawsuit. Full scope." Her voice was clear on the line. "Understood. We've drafted it. We'll file immediately. Do you want press notification now or after the withdrawal?" He didn't blink. "Now. They need to see this happen in real time." "Consider it done," she replied. "I'll notify legal and activate investor relations." His hand never shook. Not once. Tyler stepped back instinctively. Karen's mouth opened to object, but no sound came out. Darius lowered the phone and turned to Malik, who stood calmly near the front. "I'd also like a formal statement taken," Darius said. "This crew physically touched me, seized my property, and attempted to forcibly remove me from a seat I own by every technical and contractual measure." Malik nodded once. "It's being logged." Then, calmly, Darius walked back to his original seat. He sat down, legs crossed, bag at his feet, and silence fell over the cabin. Not fearful, but electric, like the air had turned thick with realization. Karen looked ready to explode. "You can't just threaten an airline mid-boarding," she snapped. "You're bluffing." Darius met her eyes. "No, I'm not." And then he turned the phone so she could hear Elena's voice on the speaker. "We've initiated the investment withdrawal process. $4 billion in committed funding will be retracted over the next 12 hours. Horizon Star's financial structure will begin collapsing within the next 3. Karen's face drained of color. Tyler slumped into a jump seat, speechless. Richard Hale muttered something to Laura, but neither dared make eye contact with anyone. Leah stepped forward then, standing at the center of the cabin. She wasn't whispering anymore. "There's more," she said. "Karen has done this before. This isn't the first time a seat was sold behind the scenes. It's happened to other passengers. The complaints were buried, ignored. Some of them went straight to legal and vanished." Karen turned to her sharply. "You have no right to speak to internal matters." "I have every right," Leah shot back. "Especially when they destroy passengers and hide behind a uniform." Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Darius looked toward Elena again. "Confirm it." Elena's voice returned instantly. "Confirmed. We found 3 previous seat reassignment incidents marked resolved, with no attached justification. The payouts were logged under discretionary budget codes. Karen Walsh was listed as the assigning party on all 3. Darius said nothing. He just turned. Slowly. Back toward Karen. "You've built a business of silence," he said. "That ends now." Karen took a step back toward the divider wall, her posture rigid, her hands trembling. This is all being taken out of context." But it wasn't. Nothing was out of context. The passengers had seen it, lived it, watched it play out in real time. There was no saving face, no rewriting the scene. The truth was in the footage, in the witnesses, in the data. Darius stood again, slowly. The passengers parted as he walked to the aisle. Leah followed behind him, no longer the shy junior attendant, but a woman reclaiming her voice in the middle of a storm. He walked past Karen, not bothering to look at her now. The moment was over. Her power had drained out with the respect of the people watching. Tyler's voice finally cracked through the silence. "Sir, I need to tell the truth." Everyone turned. "It wasn't just her," he said, eyes low. "The Hales offered money to switch the seat. I didn't stop it. I followed orders. I didn't think it would go this far." Richard shot to his feet. "We never." "You did," Tyler interrupted. "And I'm done covering for it." Darius didn't respond. He just nodded once and sat down again. He had everything he needed now. The cabin didn't feel like an aircraft anymore. It felt like a courtroom, one where the verdict had already been spoken, and justice had just taken flight. Darius stood in the aisle, calm and centered, but this time, the room tilted toward him. Karen was no longer in control. Tyler had crumbled. Richard and Laura sat frozen in their seats. And the passengers who once watched in silence were now witnesses to a reckoning. Darius reached into his inside pocket and removed a folded piece of black cardstock, sleek and matte, embossed with silver foil. He unfolded it slowly, then held it up. "My name is Darius Carter," he said, his voice steady, no longer needing to rise. "I'm the CEO of Tech Trend Innovations and the founder of Carter Capital. My companies collectively hold a $4 billion equity stake in Horizon Star Airlines. And as of this moment, that relationship is terminated." The cabin didn't react all at once. It held still, stunned, absorbing. Then came the ripple, gasps, murmurs, a low chorus of disbelief. Karen stepped forward as if to speak, but the weight of the words flattened her. Darius continued, eyes locked on her. "You insulted me publicly. You accused me of theft. You targeted me based on skin and assumption. And then you tried to bury it in silence. That ends now." He turned slightly, voice firm but calm. "Karen Walsh, you are fired. Effective immediately." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Tyler Brooks," Darius said, now turning toward the younger man seated, head lowered in shame. "You are also terminated, not just for complicity, but for mocking a customer, for obeying an illegal order, and for violating your code of conduct as a crew member." Tyler nodded faintly. "I understand." Darius didn't flinch. "Your understanding was needed 30 minutes ago." Then he shifted again, facing forward now toward the Hales. "Mr. and Mrs. Hale, you are hereby banned from all Horizon Star flights. Permanently. Your attempted bribery, your comments, and your conduct violate federal aviation ethics and passenger dignity policies. You will be escorted from this plane and listed on our internal no-fly roster." Laura's mouth dropped open. "You can't do that." Richard leaned forward, trying to reassert dominance. "We are elite-tier members." "You were," Darius interrupted. "Not anymore." The cabin fell quiet again, but this silence didn't feel like fear. It felt like judgment. Everyone present was holding the truth now, gripped in the hands of one man who had spent his entire adult life earning the very power they tried to strip from him in 30 minutes. Leah stepped beside him, visibly shaking but standing tall. "He's telling the truth," she said. "Everything. The name, the title, the investment. I saw the documentation before we boarded, and I was told not to say anything by Karen." Karen spun around. "That's a lie." "No," Leah replied. "It's not." Her voice broke slightly, but she didn't waver. "I was told not to cause disruption, that appearances mattered, and that this man looked suspicious. I didn't speak up soon enough. That's on me. But I'm speaking now." At that moment, Darius took out his phone and held it to his ear. "Vanessa," he said, "proceed." Her voice was crystal clear through the speaker. "Withdrawal in motion. Press release scheduled. Legal and PR teams aligned. Lawsuit filing will go live within the hour. It's done." Darius nodded once. "Thank you." Then he looked around the cabin. "This flight will not be taking off. Horizon Star is now under formal legal action for bias, misconduct, and systemic violation of investor contracts. This aircraft will remain grounded until this process is concluded." Karen turned, pleading now, desperation creeping into her voice. "Mr. Carter, please." This isn't necessary. This will ruin people. Good, Darius replied. Then maybe next time, they'll think twice before ruining someone just because they don't like the color of his suit, his skin, or his silence. He returned to his seat, calm, purposeful. Then Tyler stood, face flushed, voice shaking. I need to say something, he said, out loud. All eyes turned. It's true. Everything he said. Richard Hale offered Karen money to get seat 1A. I was told to assist. I didn't think it would go this far, but I didn't stop it either. And I mocked him when I should have stood up for him. That's on me. I was wrong. Karen turned to him, horrified. Tyler. But he kept going. You told me no one would question it. You said if he fought back, security would take care of it. You said, people like him don't make it stick anyway. And I listened. Darius didn't speak. He just stared. Tyler finally sat down again. No one clapped. No one praised him. Because confessions don't erase damage. They only name it. Darius leaned back, his hands folded, his breathing calm. Leah, he said quietly, you did the right thing today. Eventually. And I won't forget it. She nodded, tears quietly welling but held in place. Elena's voice came through his phone one last time. Sir, initial transfer complete. First media outlets already picking up the statement. Horizon Star stock is beginning to drop. He closed his eyes for just a second. Not in victory, but in peace. Let it fall, he said. Let it all fall. And for the first time in 30 minutes, Darius Carter didn't feel like he was standing in a first-class cabin. He felt like he was standing in a boardroom. And in that boardroom, the decision had already been made. Darius didn't speak as the cabin settled into a strange, charged stillness. He didn't need to. The damage had already been done, quietly, precisely, and without apology. The fallout was already rolling beneath them like thunder. He sat back in seat 1A, the very space they had tried to strip from him, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. Leah remained standing in the aisle nearby, watchful, her eyes trained not on Karen or Tyler, but on the passengers, on the people who had silently witnessed something they would never forget. Then came the final confirmation. His phone vibrated, and he answered without hesitation. Vanessa's voice came through with practiced clarity. It's filed, she said. The lawsuit is active. Media outlets have the press kit. Financial news networks are already pulling the filing from public records. Darius closed his eyes, just for a moment. Good, he said. Proceed with asset divestment. Vanessa continued, calm and clinical. We've completed the withdrawal. $4 billion in equity and guaranteed liquidity lines. Effective immediately. Horizon Star no longer has your capital on its books. He glanced toward the window, watching sunlight pour through the tinted glass. Then it's done, he murmured. No, it's only beginning. Vanessa replied, their credit rating has been downgraded. Stocks are falling in real time. And I've just received a cease and desist from Horizon Star's legal team attempting to suppress the footage already spreading online. Darius gave a soft, cold laugh. Too late. Across the cabin, whispers had become murmurs. Passengers were refreshing their phones. One woman turned her screen to her husband, showing the headline, Investor Darius Carter grounds Horizon Star with onboard lawsuit. Another held up a post with a video of the confrontation already reaching over 2,000 views. Karen stood rigid near the galley, her mouth slightly open, as if still waiting for someone to save her from the collapse she helped create. But no one moved. Then Elena called in again. We've pulled up internal audits from the last fiscal year, she said. Karen's name is tied to 6 unexplained first-class reassignment cases, all settled privately. 3 with service discounts, 2 with sealed complaints, 1 with an NDA attached. Darius's voice dropped. And Tyler? Flagged twice, assisted in 2 incidents, Same names, same strategy, same pattern. Leah inhaled sharply. So this was never a one-time mistake. This was a system, Elena added. Worse, we've traced one of the authorizations to an operations manager, Jeff Sorensen. He signed off on reimbursements tied to Karen's cabin reports. He knew. Darius sat up straighter. Send everything to Vanessa. Names, transactions, logs. I want the case expanded to include executive complicity. Already done. Elena confirmed. The twist didn't come like a surprise. It came like a confirmation of what Darius had always known but had waited too long to confront, that racism at this level doesn't operate alone. It needs silence, it needs cover, it needs signatures from people in offices who say things like, "We'll look into it," and then quietly throw it in the trash. Tyler, seated in a far corner now, lowered his head. I didn't know about all of that, he said softly. I thought it was just seat swaps. It was never just that, Darius replied. Not when it's repeated, not when it's hidden. Karen said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Her face was frozen in a mix of disbelief and dawning horror, not just at what she had done, but at what she had assumed she could get away with. She had operated under the illusion that the seat she gave away was just a perk, that the man she humiliated was just a passenger, that the moment would fade with the next takeoff. But she had misjudged everything. The man, the moment, the cost. And now that cost was spiraling outward, into the press, into the courts, into the stock markets. Leah turned toward Darius. What happens now? He looked around the cabin, still quiet, still filled with people who had watched a corporate system begin to devour itself. The airline falls, he said. That's what happens now. Then Malik Evans, the security officer, stepped forward from the cockpit door. Sir, he said to Darius, his voice careful. I've just received confirmation that Horizon Star Legal has grounded all outgoing flights system-wide for internal review. They're panicking. They don't want more recordings like this going public. Darius nodded slowly. They should have thought of that earlier, Malik added. The gate team has also confirmed your flight is suspended indefinitely. This aircraft is no longer cleared for departure. Karen's shoulders sagged. Leah looked to the cockpit, where the pilot had long since stopped trying to intervene. He was watching. Too. Not as a captain, but as a man trying to understand how an entire empire had just begun to crumble on his aircraft. The truth was, the collapse didn't start with the lawsuit. It started with a choice to assume, to exclude, to trade integrity for tips, to sell silence for comfort. And once that choice was exposed, the weight of it couldn't be undone, not with apologies, not with denial, not with silence. The jet never left the tarmac. What was meant to be a routine departure became something far heavier. The final breath of an airline built on quiet discrimination and unchecked authority. In the days that followed, the headlines wrote themselves. Billionaire CEO grounds airline after onboard discrimination. $4 billion withdrawal triggers collapse. Passengers film racial bias in first class. Justice delivered before takeoff. Horizon Star's stock plunged 38% in the first 48 hours. By the end of the week, bankruptcy filings were submitted. Emergency shareholder meetings were held in hotel conference rooms where red ties and hollow apologies couldn't stop the hemorrhage. The Department of Transportation launched an immediate ethics review. The FAA suspended Karen Walsh and Tyler Brooks pending further investigation. Their credentials revoked indefinitely. The Hales were quietly removed from all airline databases and flagged by every major carrier's legal departments. But none of that compared to what Darius did next. He didn't gloat. He didn't make media rounds. He didn't grandstand. Instead, He called a meeting behind closed doors. His team created a compensation package for every passenger on board that day. Refunds, upgrades, and a personal letter acknowledging what they had witnessed. Not to smooth it over, but to recognize that being a bystander to injustice leaves a mark. 2. And then, quietly, methodically, he began designing something new. Leah James was offered a formal commendation and a reassignment, this time to Carter Air, a bias-free private aviation startup quietly seeded by Darius himself. Malik Evans was brought on as a liaison for security reform. Elena was promoted. Given full oversight of corporate accountability within the new structure, Vanessa filed for class action inclusion, bringing former complaints buried by Horizon Star Legal into open court. The wave didn't just knock over one wall, it swept through the entire industry. Airlines that once hid behind bland statements were suddenly rewriting conduct codes. Training manuals were rewritten. Complaint systems were digitized and monitored externally. Darius had done what few people ever could. He hadn't just punished injustice. He'd redesigned the space it used to hide. 3 months later, on a quiet morning at a private hangar in Atlanta, the first Carter Air aircraft was unveiled. Sleek, silent, engineered for inclusion as much as for luxury, no VIP bribery, no racial ambiguity policies, no backroom upgrades. The crew wore uniforms designed by a multicultural team, embroidered with a simple phrase, "Every seat has dignity." Darius stood by the aircraft, dressed in a simple gray suit, not speaking to a crowd, but to his staff. "We don't erase the past," he said. "We replace it, one seat, one policy, one standard at a time." But even as the movement gained momentum, there was still one last voice that hadn't been heard. It came in the form of a letter, unmarked, delivered to Carter Capital's legal office. The handwriting was slanted, deliberate. Inside was a single-page confession from a former Horizon Star regional director, Jeff Sorensen, the very name Elena had surfaced weeks earlier. The note was brief but devastating. I knew. We all knew. Karen didn't act alone. She was protected. We were told to reward loyalty when it came to VIPs. The system didn't fail. It worked exactly how it was built. There was no signature, no return address. Just silence, finally cracking under the weight of its own guilt. Vanessa read it aloud in her office, then passed it to Darius. He folded it once, then placed it in a folder marked Permanent Record. Because some truths don't need press releases. They just need to be remembered. By then, the industry had changed, not perfectly, not fully, but enough. Enough that gate agents paused before questioning names on tickets. Enough that whispers weren't dismissed. Enough that Leah's story became part of new hire training across 3 airlines. And enough that, on one flight months later, a black teenager boarding alone was greeted with nothing but a smile and a seat number. No questions, no looks, no hesitation, just belonging. Darius never told the full story publicly. He didn't need to. The cabin told it for him, every camera angle, every word caught on audio, every passenger who remembered the feeling of power shifting, away from assumption and back toward accountability. He had walked onto that plane just trying to fly. He walked off having grounded an entire system. And somewhere in that long silence between fury and reform, a new flight path was drawn, one no one would ever again call unexpected. Thank you for watching this story. If it resonated with you, like the video and subscribe to the channel to see more stories like this.